Hey, welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. This show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com. All right, so welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. I got Corey L. here tonight. Corey, what up, dog?
What's up, homie?
I just want to say you are one of my closest friends, bro. I've known you probably, 8 years? How long you been clean?
Over 10.
Over 10 years.
10 and a half years.
Yeah, bro. So I've known you since the beginning. Since day one, bro.
Over a decade.
What I want you to do is just go into your story, 20, 30 minutes of your story. Ask you questions. We could talk about how we met, and the floor is all yours, bro.
Thank you. It's a lot better than having to speak in front of an audience. So I was sitting at my house, and when you text me, I want you to come do a podcast. My wife listens to them all the time, and I was just like, what the hell is a podcast? Because I still order these fucking DVDs, and I'm old school from the beeper days. I don't know, every time you call me to speak or something like that, I always feel God's spirit moving me. And I just kind of was like, all right, I'm on my way. Threw on some chucks and came over. And I was thinking about on the way over here, like the first time I met you, I'm from South Florida where people sell a lot of dope and they do a lot of drug dealing. And when I first met you, you were one of the first people that I knew that was getting clean, and I respect you for that.
Yeah, bro. Because we're pretty different, a little far apart in age. I just remember you like when I first got clean, and you were just like super quiet, didn't talk to nobody. You would go to the meeting with Steve and just sit in the corner and then just bounce 5 minutes early, show up 5 minutes late. You're definitely one of the closest people in my life. I know we don't talk every day, bro, but like I got mad love for you. You're a brother to me. And you got a badass story, bro. I just love your story, everything about it. So if you just want to go into upbringing, what it was like growing up in Hollywood.
I love you too, man. I still, even after 10 years clean, I still sit in the back of church, sit in the back of meetings. At the movie theater, I sit on the end seat. I'm always the quickest to the door just because of old survival mechanisms. I've had some past experiences that were traumatizing, so I always want to be able to get to the door if I have to. I'm a native South Floridian, and I was born and raised in Hollywood. When I grew up, I was athletic. I played baseball, football, basketball. I was captain of the volleyball team.
Damn, bro. You play volleyball?
I was captain of the volleyball team, dude, in middle school.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was real athletic. I got honor roll. My parents raised me well. So I started doing drugs when I was about 13. And I started selling drugs when I was 13. Same age. The drug dealing went with the drug using. And when I started doing that...
Would you start with weed?
Yeah, I used to put little dime bags in the little baseball plastic cards that you'd put like the Ken Griffey Jr. in. And I'd bag up little 2.8 dimes, scrimp them. You know how it is.
Yeah.
I just started doing that, and then I just got addicted to making the money. I don't know. I was a social bug. I always hung out with kids older than me. My mom used to yell at me about it. She said, it's going to get you in trouble. I never used to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just, I don't know. I started using drugs and gang banging and trying to start my own gang and this and that. I don't know what happened. My parents got a divorce.
At what age were you when you started gangbanging?
Probably the same age, 13. I always tried to hang with a clique. I always wanted to be down with somebody. I don't know. It was like when my parents got a divorce. I don't know if I was lashing out. My mom found a handgun in my drawer when I was 15, and she called the cops on me. She was part of one of those programs where the cop, if you turn in the gun, blah, 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 parents turn in the kid's gun. Mm-hmm. It was like this program for the Hollywood Police Department, and she did that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you went and got another one?
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. I just remember watching my father drink. He would take us to school sometimes in the morning, and I would get done combing my hair or something, and I'd go out to the garage where he had an office, and I'd be like, I'm ready for school. and he'd say, "Go comb your hair," and I knew something was weird because I just got done combing my hair. And he would slam the index cabinet. I used to hide vodka in there, and he'd slam the door shut. And later on, I'd peek and see what's in there, and I noticed little things like that. And my mom used to get mad at him for driving with us in the car. And I used to sneak in his truck, and pour out his drinks and throw out his cigarettes. And he used to get pissed. And I just started noticing things. My grandmother owned a bar on Hollywood Beach. Everything I grew up around was drugs and alcohol. My mom was probably like the goody two-shoe homecoming queen of Hollywood Hills High School. And she wasn't an addict. But my dad was like the Jim Morrison type, like office rocker. And my mom was like the goody two-shoe. And I remember as soon as I started doing drugs, man, I got addicted to it, man. Even when I would smoke weed, I would throw up sometimes. My friends would make fun of me. And I'd keep smoking. Or I'd hide throwing up from drinking too much. I'd try to sneak out the back door at my house, and I would try to throw up quietly so my mom wouldn't hear me. And obviously, I used to call dinosaurs when I'd throw up, so she would come and she'd find me throwing up in the backyard. And this is when I was young, 15. And I just started doing a lot of drugs, man. Me and my dad, my mom, after they got divorced, my dad, he moved out, and I moved in with him, and I dropped out of high school. In high school, I used to drive a 93 Nissan Sentra with an ounce of cocaine and the little black Tanita scale and a QP weed and smoke fucking chopper joints during school. And back in the days, they would call lace joints. And I mean, high school kids doing that. Something ain't right, brother. I started getting into a lot of drugs, man, hanging out with only people that did drugs. But I was weird back in the days because I was like, I could hang out with the surfers that were doing acid, and then I could hang out with the other people. Like I could hang out with people that were putting crack in blunts. I just got along with everybody. And I started doing a lot of drugs, man. I got addicted to Xanax, ecstasy. In high school, I was banged up. Like I hear a lot of this stuff out here right now about the fentanyl. My dad overdosed on fentanyl in front of me in the 90s.
Wow.
He was getting
the patches.
He was getting the patches and eating the gel. He was ordering lollipops online. They had fentanyl lollipops back in the days. This is the 90s. So people would think it's a new drug. It's not a new drug. It's been around for a long time.
Fentanyl's been around forever. But the only time I heard about it was the patches, and kids used to suck the patches out. And people used to die back in the day from eating the patches.
Yeah, they used to take the gel out. And people were overdosing back then. People weren't doing as much fentanyl back then because they had the oxys. And my dad got real bad on that. Like
on opiates.
Real bad, man.
Is that how you started doing opiates?
I actually took my first Oxycontin with my father.
Wow. How old were you?
I was about 18. He had the green 80s. He used to take the coating off of them.
And snort them?
Yeah, I did. He used to make fun of me because I would snort everything.
And he would eat them?
He would eat them. He'd say, "Why do you snort everything?" If I look at it now, it was my dad was always like he was not like the father. He was like my best friend. And there's times if I look back now, I appreciate who he was and why. But it was hard not having the father figure and just having a friend.
Yeah, now that you got kids, you'd never imagine doing that with your kids, you know?
No way.
Yeah.
After I got on them Xannies, man, and all the pills, it was over for me. Like,
what was that, like 18?
Yeah, 18, man. I was addicted to them.
And were you selling a lot then, or when did you start selling a lot?
Yeah, I was moving work. I used to have a friend. I had this Chico friend. He taught me how to repress, re-rock cocaine. Back in the days, that was like, if you knew how to do that, it was almost like cooking crack. If you could take a half a bird and turn it into a bird and a half with the right cut and know how to mix it right, you make a lot of money. And like people would get mad at my friend, this Chico that's taught me how to do it. He'd say, "You can't go around showing people that because then you're taking away from the game."
They fuck the game up, yeah.
And then I would start teaching people, and everybody would get hot. So it's like, once you learn how to do that, it's over. So once I learned how to do that, it was over. I just started getting involved heavy, man. I had this bad drug deal go wrong one time. I got pistol whipped on acid, and I never been right since. I was about 18. A buddy of mine was taking birds up to Vermont. We were getting them down here for like 17.5 back in the days.
Not like a pound of what? Coke?
No, it was like a key.
A Kia Yay?
Yeah, a key of Coke. It was 17.5 back in the days, and he was bringing it up to Vermont and getting off the plane and getting 35 cash. So he was bringing some up there, and the night before, I guess he went through somebody else and cut somebody else's throat and blah, blah, blah. And we were getting fucked up at the house before he was going to jump on the plane the next day. And one of the kids we used to be in the clique with, we used to be in the same gang. He came in the house. I used to cut the kid's hair and everything. We were cool, but he was one of them hot wires that, like, you were cool with him, but he was like crazy. And I was tripping on acid. I was taking microdots, and he put a gun to my head and slapped me in the face with it. And if you've ever taken acid, you don't ever want to get pistol whipped on acid. I've never been right since, and that's
where like the trauma started?
For sure. For sure.
You thought like he was definitely going to kill you at that point?
Yeah. I became that person that I feared in that room.
Yeah, because how old were you at this point?
18.
So that's probably when you were like, yo, I ain't going to let no one else do that shit to me.
Nah, I turned into him, man. I turned into the other side of the gun. And I think it was all out of fear. I know today it was all out of fear. And things like that happened, but not as bad. And like when that happened to me, I just started
moving different.
I started robbing and stealing, dude, with the pistol. And I would take Xanny bars. I would rob my friends, bro, people that I know since kindergarten. Mm-hmm. I got one of my best friends right now to this day that I ended up robbing. And I went to Orlando with some stuff that I took out of his safe, and then robbed somebody else when I was up there, came back and paid my buddy back. And like when we met back up, we were like crying like little kids. It was crazy. Like, I'm not that type of person. I can be. Like, I wasn't raised like that, but like something inside of me, I don't know what happened. I think drugs had a lot to do with it, but I'm not going to lie to you. To this day, I still feel like doing shit like that I shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to blame it on the drugs, but it's not the drugs. It's just in me. I don't know what it is. A part of me that always wants to be like that.
I feel like once you've crossed those lines, you know what it's like to cross them. You know what I mean? It's, let's say a Mike Tyson, he don't fight no more. He knows he could still throw a right punch and knock someone out and kill him. You know what I mean? So he still has the ability to. And I think once you've crossed those lines, we know we have the ability to be that scummy person to do that, because most people have never been there before where they would never even do that. And I think that having the ability is like knowing how to fight and just choosing not to, whereas some people have never been in that situation before.
There's sometimes, even in recovery, I'll scare myself because I'll feel the old me coming back up. In my line of work, I run a halfway house business and I work in treatment. Mm-hmm. And I deal with people that are on drugs and they get lippy or they're drunk and they run their mouth. And I really have to just remove myself because I can't put my hands on nobody right now. I got too much to risk. I'm not a convicted felon.
Yeah.
And I should be. And that beast is still there. With God, man, I'm just like, I'm a peaceful dude. People can yell some shit in my face and it's like martial arts for me. Everything that I learned is like, I'm not going to let that pride get me, man. Now, if somebody put their hands on me, that's a totally different ballgame.
Self-defense. Yeah.
Exactly. But I know God has humbled me so much that I have self-control that somebody around me is not going to cause me to put my hands on them. Mm-hmm. You know?
And I have a bigger battle that I'm fighting, not just this person. Like, I'm trying not to be that person because it's easy to be that person. It's harder for me not to. So it's more of a difficult task to me not to hit someone or slap someone.
For sure.
It's a harder route.
It takes sometimes all my might in the world just to walk away without slapping the shit out of somebody. Like, there's time, and you know what? Every time I do that, I feel like every time that I'm about to punch somebody in the mouth and I don't, I gain another step towards God. And other people see that light too, because I've done it.
And people have been like, well, I can't believe you didn't hit that dude.
Yeah. But I've worked in a distribution department for a bakery for like 8 years. Mm-hmm. And this driver got lippy one time. And I worked with my buddy that's in recovery too, my buddy Steve. And I walked away and just started saying the Serenity Prayer, walking in circles, just pray. I just prayed. And my buddy walked up to me. He's like, yo, I don't know how you just did that, bro. He's like, that's cool. And I was like, and then that moment, I felt him see that change. I don't have to preach to him nothing. He just seen how I did it. And people see that.
And people know that you can. You're a big dude, bro. You know what I mean? And even just seeing you get clean. There are people I know from Hollywood that were like, oh, like just seeing you get clean has inspired so many people from Hollywood that were like, bro, I seen the neighborhood dope man get clean. So it's very cool to see somebody that has the ability to sell dope or hurt people, whatever, just choose not to live that way no more.
For sure. Even right now in Hollywood, if I could go, I know where all the bandos are. I still, a lot of my friends are still on the street doing their thing. And it's just, when they see me, it's just, we'll go out or something and they're like, yo, is it all right if I order a beer? And I'm like, yeah. It took me like over 7 years for me to get comfortable. And they drink around me or they smoke. Or if I go to a concert and like people are smoking trees, like you can't lean over and be like, hey man, you can't smoke weed. It's not good for you. And I'm in recovery.
That's illegal.
Yeah, they're sitting at a freaking Dave Matthews Band concert and then they smoke a little. People can smoke weed. I'm not against weed. I can't smoke weed. But you can't go around telling everybody, hey, you can't do that around me. It's everywhere, especially now.
Yeah. So let's get into the rest of the story. So I guess like at 18, you have that altercation that kind of changes you. So what does the next couple of years look like, or the next 10 years?
Drugs and violence. And
did you start selling more, like more than that at that point?
I actually had a ex-girlfriend that I was dating. She moved to Orlando, and I had a couple buddies. I dropped out, and then most of my friends were moving to Orlando to go to UCF and shit like that. So I moved up there and just started moving work. Like every week I would just drive.
Was it mainly coke or just coke, weed, whatever?
Everything, really. I started selling ecstasy,
rolls,
everything.
When did the pills get real bad?
Which ones?
I guess like opiates, because for me, I know that like in Broward County, South Florida, whatever, like it was just, I used to see pills as like softer drugs than coke and crack, but oxys and roxys and fentanyl and methadone, like all the opiates, I didn't realize that it was like on the same level as crack and heroin.
I don't know, they started getting a hold of me at like early 20s. I was in Orlando doing that. I was doing opiates too. I was taking a lot of ecstasy too.
Yeah.
I think I started getting like chemically dependent on all like the opiates and the Xannies like early 20s, in the early 2000s. I went to jail up in Orlando for a burglary. I punched through a friend of mine's window because I wanted to get an Eminem CD out because I would listen to this Eminem song over and over when I was rolling. And I ended up breaking her window to get a CD, so I went to jail for fucking some stupid shit, burglary and criminal mischief in Orlando. And I got on probation. I would do all right for a little bit. And I just, once I went to jail, I came back down here, and it was the same thing, man. I would just, everything that I did, I would end up in jail. And luckily, I'm not a convicted felon. I tried to stab my older brother with a knife. He's a bodybuilder, so we tried to fight, and I caught an aggravated battery with a deadly weapon charge, man. And I remember my mom's face when the cops were taking me away in the cop car. I remember looking back at my mom and seeing the look on her face after I just tried to stab my older brother with a knife. And you don't forget that. Like, the look on her face haunts me. And I'm not that dude, man. That's not me. But like I said, under the circumstances, I'm banged up. He's a big dude. I was just kind of defending myself, and I got a little out of hand. And luckily, he didn't show up for court, and they dropped the charges. And after that, I would go in and out of jail. I would catch possession of cocaine charge. I would do drug court. Drug court's like a system where you can get the withheld adjudication. I'd make it through that, and then I wouldn't have another felony. Then I caught a battery charge over at the Hard Rock. I punch somebody in the mouth at the center bar and catch another charge, do my anger management, and then boom, that's a misdemeanor. And this last time I went to jail was my saving grace. I was looking at an armed trafficking charge, and God intervened. I was living in Davie, Florida. I had been doing my thing for a long time, and this was 2009.
So I guess people don't know what that means. Like, I've been to your house before, and you live in the same house now. And I remember asking you, what was it like when you were using? Because, like, in the midst of all this, I don't know if you got married, but you got kids, and you're still selling dope out the same house. And, like, I go to your house now, and it's just all this spiritual shit everywhere, and you listen to Bob Marley, and I would only imagine that when you were using, it was like a whole nother household, bro.
Yeah, people were walking around with assault rifles. I used to have a 308, and my wife used to say, she always used to ask me, do you have to carry that gun everywhere you go? I would take it to the toilet. I don't know, I just always had a gun. And I remember one time I was going to the doctor, and something told me to leave it home. And when I did, as soon as I left the house, this guy broke in the back of my house, dude. And my wife actually grabbed the gun that I left off the counter and chased the dude out the back door with the gun. It's something, and I never leave it home. But I was like, I'm going to the doctor. I don't need it right now.
So in like therapy, because I was thinking is that I've learned that we create the same scenarios that we grew up in. So the same scenario you grew up with, I don't know if you could see, is your dad being the wild one and, you know, mom being the goody two shoes. That's like you and Tara.
Yeah. Tara's the peaceful, but she can be wild too.
She can be wild too, yeah.
Yeah, she threw a butter knife one time at me and it stuck in the door.
Wow.
A butter knife with no tip, stuck right in the door. But she's calm now.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, when they started watching my house, the cops were watching my house. I guess somebody must have snitched on me or something. It all comes down to that. And I was getting ready to go. What happened, what led up to it was my brother died. And it just like, my little brother Blaine, he passed away December 4th, 2009. Or no, December 5th. I had my firstborn son December 4th. Quentin. And my brother died the next day. I was home after my son was born on the 4th, and then my little brother Blaine came home on the 5th. He came home high. We got in an argument, and I kicked him out. I pulled a gun on him. We got in a bad argument. I remember my dad saying, I wish you guys stopped fighting. Put the gun away, Corey. And then when I kicked him out, he got hit by a car walking to the hospital to see my son. Yeah, that was the last time I seen him. And that's kind of what led up to me getting clean. 2 weeks after that, I found my father overdosed again in my house that he was living with me in. And this isn't conducive to bringing home a newborn son, my first son ever, too. And I went crazy, man. I went on armed robbery sprees. I lost my mind. I wanted to die.
How old are you at this point?
This is when I was 30. This is 2009. I was wilding out all the way till 2010. Like in March, I caught a charge. The cops were watching my house. As soon as I pulled out, I was going to the tattoo shop because I worked at a tattoo shop. And I saw the car get behind me. The cop car got behind me. So I had a gun. I had bottles of methadone and Roxy's and 8-ball in my shoe. I blazed up a Kirby joint. You know, I had a Scully on. It was like 80 degrees. I was being a moron. And I just pressed some work, fucking took off, and they see another cop got behind me, and boom, they pulled me over. And I tried to wiggle my way out of it and tell the guy that was arresting me that I was a confidential informant going on a drug sting, and that I was like this undercover cop working for the police. And he was looking at me like, come on, dude. He knew. And I was telling him, I have a buddy that lives in Hollywood, Florida. This guy, Joey Tango. He's a lieutenant. He's a detective now. I always used to hang out with him when we were kids, and he always gets me out of trouble. So I sprayed his name to the Davie cop. And Davie and Hollywood are close to each other. You know, they're different cities. And he looked at me and he said, Officer Joey Tango? Now I was like, whoa. And I felt God right there. I felt like this presence that was like, you can't, when you feel, there's these God moments, you feel like divine intervention that you can't put a word on it. I felt it. I felt God's hand putting his hand on me saying it's going to be all right. And he was like, he called him up. He knew him. And he was like, and I was thinking, what's the coincidences of this cop in Davie knowing the one cop that I know in a different city? And he called him up and he asked him and he said, if you answer this question right, then you can have somebody come pick up your gun in your car. I'll drop the armed trafficking and I'll just bring you in on a possession charge. And that's what happened. He said, what baseball park did you play at? And I said, Rotary Park on Taft Street. He said, you must be the luckiest son of a bitch I ever arrested.
Wow.
He had my brother-in-law come pick up my gun in my car, and then he took me in on a possession. And I've been clean since.
Wow.
And that's 2010. So
Wow,
I've been
crazy.
clean over 10 years.
Crazy.
Even when I went to, when I got out on bond, I remember they court ordered me to go to this county facility, Bark. And I was just like sick, man, dope sick. I remember going there with no shoes on, and the lady didn't want to let me in because I had methadone in my system. And she had a glow about her too. She had that God glow, and I can't explain it. It's not like this orange big glow. It's just like this glow that angels have. You can't put it in words, not to get too deep. She said, I'm not going to write down you have methadone in your system, and I'm going to let you come in. And I can't put you back on the street looking the way you're looking. And I said, thank you. I was shaking. At this time, I was shooting steroids and not even working out. I was smoking crack. I don't even smoke crack, dude. And she let me come in, and knowing that she shouldn't have let me. And that was part of my journey, dude. I've been clean since that shit.
Yeah, because I actually remember you, because I've been doing H&I and bringing meetings into that same facility, and I remember you being in there. And it's interesting that we've known each other that whole time. So up until that point, did you know about meetings?
My grandma actually died 12 years sober.
Wow.
In AA. My dad was in the fellowship too for a little bit, for 5 years. And he used to take us to meetings when I was a kid. Yeah, I actually carried my grandmother's coin.
Medallion.
Yeah, it's got 12. It's a $50 with 12 holes drilled in it. I have it in my pocket right now.
Wow, you still carry it?
Still carry it.
Wow.
Every day.
Wow.
And that, I'm familiar with meetings.
So when you go to Bark, you go to detox, you're shaking or whatever, do you think that you're getting clean? Do you have it in your head that you're going to stay clean? Like, what happens in there in those 30, 45 days that, like, changes, like, your mentality a little bit?
I don't know. You just feel like you're going to die. When you're coming off benzos and alcohol and opiates at the same time, and methadone, that detox right there, they had to keep me on the second protocol. They had to not let me go after the first 5 days because I was still shaking. And I was so sick. Not only physically sick, but just done, man. My brother was dead. My dad fucking overdosed in my house. I've been in and out of jail. I just got my firstborn son. I'm a scared father. I was done, bro. I was hallucinating in detox. There was like a little bird chirping out my window, and I wouldn't get out of bed. They kept yelling, group time, and I wouldn't get up. And I would just listen to this bird chirp, thinking it was my brother talking to me.
Wow.
Like losing my mind.
What was it like when you actually went to treatment?
I went to treatment one time. It stuck with me because I guess I was ready. In 12-step fellowships that I go to, they knock treatment. And that ain't my story, man. Treatment actually taught me how to live my life, dude. It taught me how to solve problems.
And you met your sponsor in treatment?
I still have the same sponsor. He worked for the treatment center that I went to, and he's still my sponsor today. I've had the same sponsor for over 10 years.
Wow.
And he taught me a lot, man. There were days like my therapist would have me write a letter to my brother, and my sponsor would walk in and bring me mail to my room, and I'd be crying, and he'd be like, yo, man, you all right? And we would talk or whatever, and he would say, you know what? He'd start talking about his brother because his brother died from alcoholism. And then before he walked out of his room, I remember this is the first time I ever heard about it. It was about empathy. He said, that means I feel you, brother. Like he lost his brother, I lost my brother, and my tears went away, and it was the first time that I felt like that connection with somebody that had been through the same thing as me, and that kind of locked us in. And like little things like that kept happening in treatment. People were like taking the water out of the toilet bowl to smoke cigarettes. People were snorting Oxy 80s in there.
Wow.
Listen, it's just like when you go to treatment, you're either gonna do it or you ain't. And that shit saved my life, man. I took parenting classes. It was hard for my.
Did your girl come visit you?
Yeah, that was another problem I had. My wife came to visit me one time on her birthday, and it was like my first test of spirituality, because the guard at the front wouldn't let her in because she was like 2 minutes late. So I sat in my room in treatment and watched her run back to the car crying, and it was her birthday, and I felt like I was like on my way to go fuck this guard up, dude. And like, I'm starting to walk, and I'm like, get tears in my eyes. I'm so pissed. And something was like, I just felt God teaching me a little lesson. This is the kind of shit you need to learn how to deal with. That was my fault that I'm there. The dude's doing his job. Like I didn't have clarity like that back in the days.
You'd be like, bro, it's 2 minutes. Come on, what the fuck?
Yeah, I wouldn't even be talking, bro. He'd be laying on the floor leaking. Yeah. It ain't even fucking. I really had to practice it right there. God was already moving me, man. I can't even explain. God moves me. I don't even know how to, like a puppet. Mm-hmm. Like as soon as I was going to drop, dude, I was calmed by God's spirit saying, "Listen, you gotta leave it alone, man. This is what you gotta learn how to deal with. You gotta start being a big boy now and not learn how to put your hands on people." Mm-hmm. And I started digging in steps too. Like when I jumped out of there, when I got out of treatment, I started going to meetings. I go to a 12-step fellowship, and I'm not gonna lie. When I first got out of Bark, I went and grabbed like a half ounce of coke, and because that's what I did.
Just to sell.
Yeah, it was though. I was just gonna make a little money.
Yeah.
And I just something didn't feel right, dude. I actually gave it away.
Wow.
For free. I gave it to my buddy. He's, what's wrong with you, man? I said, listen, man, I'm done with this shit. You can have it. He's like, you want the money? I said, nah, keep it.
Wow. And I know you used to always tell me, bro, not selling the drugs is harder sometimes than the drugs.
It is. It's very hard.
So let's talk about when you get out of treatment and what like that first year looked.
I think going to the meetings was the hardest part, because I remember going to meetings when I was a kid, but not for myself. Mm-hmm. So when I started going.
Did you think it was like corny? Did you have that vibe of, man, this is just whack?
It's weird.
It's weird, yeah. You thought it was just weird.
People are hugging. These people are like, everybody's smiling. It's like that movie Pleasantville. Awkwardly happy. And it was creepy, man. But I just kept going, man, because I was scared. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't want to go back and I remember my grandmother. I remember pizza recovery, and I wanted that. And I seen people picking up medallions and listening to like your story. Other people, hell has an exit. I used to listen to speaker tapes, not to break people's anonymity, but I remember the same pain that brought me here is the same pain that got me out of here. And that's ironic in the spiritual world, you know what I'm saying? It can do that. And I remember going to those meetings, I started working steps. I went through all the steps, the traditions. I've had good experiences and I've had bad experiences with the steps. I sponsor people now. The growth that I have now, like the 12 steps, my dad always used to say, everybody should live by the 12 steps. Mm-hmm. And until you do them and live them, you can't explain it to anybody.
It's like doing acid.
Yeah, if you haven't tripped, you don't know what it's like to trip. So if you're not living the 12 steps,
know what it's like.
Like if someone does something wrong, you'd be like, dude, just live your 9-step, man. And they're like, what?
What about like when we first started becoming close? Because I remember I used to see you all the time. And honestly, bro, I was just scared of you, bro. You're like 6'4", 300-pound dude. Maybe not 300, what are you, 240?
230 now. I've been exercising.
There you go. Other brother's dude's huge. He don't talk to anybody, bro. He just sits in the back. He never shares. And tattoos on his face, covered in tattoos. And not that I didn't talk to people that were in meetings that were a little quiet, but like you just never said nothing for a whole year. And I remember I was at the noon or something, and you just walked up to me and were like, "Hey man, you want to be my friend?" And I was like, "Yeah, bro, whatever. Hit me up." And then we just started hanging out.
I remember hearing you share, dude. I said, this guy, man, I got to stick with this dude. Because you were doing recovery, man. You were like one of the first people that I heard doing recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted that same juice that you had. And you could see it in your spirit.
Yeah, I'll see you all over the place. I remember I would talk to Steve, and then you'd always be like 20 feet away,
Sit
by the door, headed to your car.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could tell there was like a lot of fear going on, but at meetings, like you never really know. Like they say, you can't weigh or gauge someone's willingness to stay clean. Sometimes it's in the one person that you don't think is even interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we started hanging out, and I remember I would go to your house and we'd play a speaker tape for you, whatever.
We used to get down on the speaker tapes.
Yeah.
Not too many people can feel that. That's why I think, like, when you do these podcasts and
Someone
stuff,
did that for me, bro. Bro, this dude, this crazy Steve, Trainwreck Steve, bro, this guy gave me a CD of speaker tapes.
it was over.
Bro, it was on. I was like, get the fuck out. Bro, I was listening to speaker tapes in high school just like over and over. Oh, you got to listen to this guy. You got to listen to this. Because it's different, bro. When you go to a meeting, you hear people with 3 years clean, 6 years clean, 7 years clean. We're listening to people with 15, 18, 20 years clean, screaming and yelling with all this passion. And I just got real hooked on it. It was like, for me, the way that I see it is like, when I get into something, I want to really like study the greats. It's, you love music, but you never listen to Jimi Hendrix, or you love music, but you never listen to Bob Marley, or like you don't like Tupac. It's, yeah, bro, I understand there's good rap today, but you got to know where it came from. And when I started listening to speaker tapes, I started to really get into like how the 12 steps started and having a lot of appreciation for the founding members and how special it is. Because at first I'm like, bro, this shit's corny or whatever. I didn't like the speaker last night. They were boring. And then I started to really appreciate and see how it works.
I was the same way. I started listening to, like, looking at the history of all of it, and learning how the 12-step fellowship came from Oxford groups. And like the way I am, if you tell me you can't do that because the Bible says so, I'll say, show me where it says that.
Yeah.
Show me. But I'm the same way with the 12-step fellowship I'm in. I want to know where it's coming from, what this thing's about. And I did the same thing. I ate it up, man. That's just something that God just puts you there. But I'm able to sit in a church or anywhere and feel the spirit and get the goosebumps.
Yeah, because a lot of times, like I remember when I was a kid, I would go to church, and like my mom's real religious, and I would just focus on the one thing I didn't get with. I would focus on the one thing that didn't make no sense. Like, bro, you think people really live that long? Like, the fuck? Like, I would just focus on like the small things that didn't make any sense to me instead of trying to see the bigger picture or the message. It's not about whether or not the stories are true or not or whatever. It's about the message is still true today. And I would just go to a church and pick it apart. And I did that everywhere I went. I would go to Publix and find the things I don't like about Publix. I would justify everything in my life. And I couldn't go somewhere and just find something good. And it's like, bro, I could go anywhere and get a message out of it. Sometimes it's just what I don't want to do. This guy, I think his name was Marvin, would always say, you're all my teachers. Some of you teach me what to do. Some of you teach me what not to do.
You never know where the message is coming from. One of the blessings I got from recovery is probably if you see a priest and a drug dealer sitting on the bench, you think the priest is going to be giving you the message, but it ends up being the drug dealer. And it's just, you never know who God's angels are. They could come with gold teeth and tattoos.
They normally do. In my life, they have.
Yeah, for experience. I started getting deep in 12-step fellowship, man. That just from, I don't know what it is. There's just something that God gets the glory, man. Like, how I live my life is to honor him. Like, since I got clean, I've been with my wife only. And our relationship isn't always good all the time, but I don't go outside my marriage, bro.
That's awesome.
And those are things that I honor, dude, you know, for God. And I haven't put my hands on anybody. I haven't gone to jail. I started getting my life back together, man. I started going to school.
Let's talk about school. How did that all happen?
Somebody told me to go get my GED, so I did.
At what age? How old are you?
I was 32. I went and got my GED, and I dropped out when I was 18, and I had 2 years clean around there.
Mm-hmm.
I went and got my GED. I was doing step work, and it said write down some goals, so I did. I went back and got my GED, and then I asked, what do I do now? I asked somebody. They said, go to college. I said, go to college for what? I don't know, just go to college. And I did. And I'm an honor student in college. I graduated with honors to Broward College for my associates, and I'm now currently working on my bachelor's in social work at FAU. And because I was scared to walk into class to get my student ID, and you walk me into student life and help me get my student ID.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, I remember you were like, bro, I don't know about this. I was like, what do you mean, bro? You just go in there and get your ID. You're like, bro, if you gave me a pistol and said we're going to go into this trap house and rob them, I could do that. But this is just weird, bro. I don't know nobody at school. Like, what if they make me look stupid? Or what if I show up late? I was just like, bro, it's just school. And you're like, bro, this is mad hard for me. And it was cool, man. It was really cool seeing you, like, start school and like, ask me about classes and rate my professor.
I was a good student when I wasn't doing drugs. I was on a roll, and now
What was it
I'm
like
on a roll
walking
again.
into school?
They look at me crazy.
Yeah.
It was different. Like sometimes the professor would just be like scared to talk to me because I got face tattoos and I'm covered in tats, and I could see people being a little discouraged. I get that sometimes until they get to meet me, and then they know I'm a teddy bear.
Yeah.
School's one of the best things that ever happened to me, man. I got nominated for an award, most outstanding student from the English department in 2015 from Broward College.
That's so cool.
I got to go to a ceremony. Here I am, tattoo face, up there with a bunch of 18-year-olds. And my mom had 4 boys, and I'm the only boy that graduated college.
Wow.
Yeah, and she got to sit and watch me get my award with my
That's
wife.
so cool.
Like never in a million years. And then I had another professor make a scholarship in my name for kids that dropped out. So she made a scholarship called the Corey Lewis Scholarship.
Wow.
And that felt cool. Like you can't make that shit up, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I just started going to school, man. I love it. And right now I had to write a 9-page paper, and like I'm helping some kids in my class do APA, and it's weird that people are asking me to revise their paper. Hey, Corey, can you look this over before I turn it in? And I'm like, all right. And as I'm revising their paper, I'm like, am I really sitting in my room right now revising another student's paper in college before they turn it in? And like, I'll have my professor wrote me, and she's like, yo, I read one of your papers. I started crying, and it just, you feel God moving you. Like, it's a miracle, man.
Wilder than any acid trip. I tell people all the time, bro. I'm like, bro, like what happens to people when they get clean? It's really true what they say, like beyond your wildest dreams, anything you ever thought of is nothing compared to whatever you can come up with.
Addicted to the good stuff. I think once I learned how to replace all the bad stuff with the good stuff, now I'm addicted to school, eating right, and all this stuff. I got diabetes in recovery and high blood pressure. I never had that, and I had to hit a bottom with that, just like I did drugs. And now I'm like drinking protein shakes and riding my bike 10 miles a night.
Organic food.
Yeah, eating all kinds of good stuff. I'm eating this algae called sea moss.
Yeah, no, you got me on it.
My buddy told me about it. I said, what are you giving me? I pulled up to his house. This kid I used to sell dope with, this black kid, he's getting his master's degree, man.
Oh, wow,
he's a
really?
good cat. Yeah, he's like, come by, man. I know your sugar levels were high. And I'm like, what's up, dog? I pull up. He pulls me out this jar. We're out on the street.
Wow.
He gives me the jar of sea moss. It looks crazy. And I'm like, what are you giving me? He's like, take 2 teaspoons, two big tablespoons a day for a month and tell me how you feel. And I'm like, dude, I'm not putting this in my mouth. It looks like purple apple, like almost like applesauce or something. And I've been taking it, man. And it's changed my life, dude.
Yeah,
Little
it's
things
crazy.
like that. And like not even going to school, I became a father. And I remember the kid that they used to bring to the treatment center. I used to have supervised visits when my son was just born, when I was in treatment. And if I left, I'd go to jail, so I couldn't do anything. He's never seen me with a drink or a drug, and he was real young, so he doesn't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had another kid, my other son, Cameron. He's nonverbal autistic. Quentin's 10.
What was that having, or what's it like having a son that has autism?
It's another angel God sent to me. I can't put it in words, man. There's like when you have a son that can't talk, it puts things in perspective for you. We take advantage of the little things. He shows me, like he speaks to me through his eyes, and like everything. Like he listens to Bob Marley, which is weird. If we're riding in the truck and you have to put Bob Marley on, all right? And if you turn it off, he goes and he points at it, turn it back up. That's how he talks. He'll like point and stuff. And he gets mad if you turn the Bob Marley off. And he'll play the same song over and over.
Wow.
And it's really cool that every once in a while I'll hear him mimicking some like, whoa, yo. And then he's saying it in his own lingo. Like he's humming it. And like there ain't no drug in the world that can make you feel better. And it's those little moments, man, when you're there with your kids. Like today before I came here, I was helping Quentin do homework. And if I was on drugs or living how I used to, I would have never did that, man.
Yeah, I know. Like for me growing up, I just always emulated like the drug dealers and the gangsters and whatever. And dude, I wasn't even really selling drugs, bro. I was just a straight crackhead looking for $20. Like as much as I'd like to play this scenario in my head, bro, I don't have a glamorous story at all, even for a little bit, bro. I was dope sick at a Coinstar. And as I've gotten clean, I see people take care of their kids and go to school. And when I see people go back to school that used to shoot heroin or be on dope or whatever, or sell pills, I'm like, wow, that's gangster. Like people going back to school, to me, I'm like, that's cool. I see people actually stepping up and being good parents and taking care of their kids. Like my whole perception of what's cool has changed.
Me too. I started going back to school just because of you, my other buddy Jim, and then like speaker tapes. The guy who Hell Has an Exit started that. I would listen to speaker tapes, and they inspire me to go to school.
Yeah, bro, because you're like, oh, bro, I don't want to go back to school. I'm already in my 30s. You got people going back to school at 55 years old, 60 years old, going back to school.
And it feels good to work your brain out. I want to be able to have that degree where I work in a field where like you can't say nothing to me because I got the paperwork. I think I have the experience from doing drugs.
Living in your life.
Yeah, but I work in treatment now. So, and I left my old job that I worked for 8 years to make way less money just to work in treatment because what you're doing, like you run the treatment center and own it, whatever.
Appreciate that.
And I worked at this old job that I had.
I was trying to get you over there for a long time, bro. I was just like, bro, I just need Corey over here. And people were like, he ain't got no experience. Bro, it don't matter. He just need to be around the clients. Because, bro, you just got like a positive energy, bro. Like, I've never heard one bad thing about you, bro, from any staff or anyone in recovery or whatever, bro. Like, you're just a super positive dude. A lot of people, like, see how many friends I got or how many people know me. But honestly, bro, like, you're one of my closest friends, bro. I feel like I could talk to you about anything.
For sure, man. I love you, Tom.
Love you too, bro.
I was working before this. I was working graveyard shift for 8 years, 6 nights a week at a bakery running the distribution department. I was making good cash, but I never saw my family, dude. Since I came and worked with you, my life is changed. I work during the day, so all night I'm with my kids and family. Yeah. It's just a whole nother world, dude. My life has changed so much. And it ain't about the money, man. I could be a CEO of your company, and I would think I would rather be in my little IOP van, what I do, and drive, because there's this transition that happens from PHP to IOP, and it's important that the client has a good transition. So when you got the right music on and you make them feel comfortable, usually they last a little longer, and I've noticed things like that. So I give it my all. About the money, man. I like working with addicts. I just love it. That's what I want to do, man. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe run groups or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to focus on school and keep up with some helping people out.
So like for people that think God is weird, or like someone that doesn't have a relationship with God, like even now saying the word God is so normal to me because I've just been saying it since I had 4 or 5 years clean. But there was a long time, even up until my first couple years clean, I wouldn't really say God. I wouldn't say that word. I would say higher power or whatever. And I've transitioned into saying it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me feel weird at all. Like the universe, whatever you want to think is, to me, it's all encompassing. But like, how was your transition into like your spirituality, and if you were trying to help someone who struggled with the God concept? Because honestly, bro, that's the biggest question I get is, oh, I can't be clean. I don't understand the God thing, or like, I don't get the God part, or I'm not close with God, or I'm not religious.
I think it's changed. I went to Catholic school, and my mom is like diehard Catholic. She brings holy water over to the halfway houses and,
Oh
and
my
prays
God.
over the guys.
Really?
Yeah, and I call myself a Christian, but there's a lot of spirituality too that I have. My dad just died, took his ashes down to the Keys, and as soon as I put him in the ocean, this stingray came and swam through the ashes. And as soon as that happened, I just had that spiritual moment. And it was like things like that happen in recovery. Like you can't, there's no quinky dink that as soon as I put my dad's ashes in the ocean, that this leopard stingray just happened to come and do a circle through the ashes and then swim away. And then you start to question your spirituality. Wait a minute. Am I a Hindu now? Because I think my dad just came to me as a sting, and it changes. Your spirituality changes. So it's hard to put like concrete words on like God or spirituality because it's different all the time. I went to a Florence and the Machine concert and I had goosebumps from my head to my toe, and it's like I didn't think I was gonna like it. It was gonna be a chick concert, and like I felt God so heavy, man. That's the last place. Like you think you would get that in church. I do get it from church, but when I'm in something like that, it's like God showing Himself. I had a dude, this kid that lived up the street from me that I used to do tattoos on. He robbed my house, and he was on that Flocka when it was around Broward County. He ended up writing me a letter from prison.
Wow.
And asked me to sponsor him. So my wife is like, how are you even writing back to this guy after he broke into our house? And I remember how many times I did that to people. So I was like, you know what? She's like, what are you going to do? So I picked up some step work and I sent it back to him in prison.
Wow.
When we were doing step work.
That's cool.
And it's like little that you feel the God in that. What's a quinky dink? Like you don't, only God can do that, bro. And I always try to turn that chitter chatter in my head into like constant conversation with God.
Yeah, I think being an addict, that we have a lot of empathy and that other people can't even fathom, bro, because I hear my friend or someone I know, oh, someone broke into my car. And I'm like, yeah, bro, I'm really sorry. But they'll be like, oh, that motherfucker, that piece of shit. And I'm just like, bro, I've broken into cars. It ain't like a cool feeling, bro. It ain't like you want to break into a car, bro. It's fuck, like I have to do this. And it's not that they shouldn't be held accountable. They should go to jail. They should have consequences. But it's a real shitty feeling, bro, when you're dope sick or whatever and you're like that low where you're going to break into a car. And 9 times out of 10, there ain't nothing in there. So like I think that God allows people like us to go through certain things so we can love the people that have been through those things that are currently going through them, you know?
For sure. Practice forgiveness. Once you keep praying on God to come inside and He fills you up with His Spirit, it's like He gives you discernment. So when you have the Spirit in you, you have discernment. You can see these things. You can see the learning lesson in it without slapping somebody. If you don't have the Spirit, you can't do that.
I get resentful towards people too sometimes. My biggest thing is it's so hard for me to forgive somebody sometimes. Like, I can't believe they did that. I just get worked up on it. And it's normally over real petty things. But that's like what I struggle with like on a daily basis, where I'll think it's over and I think I've forgiven somebody. And then a year will go by and like just randomly I'll just think of them and be like, oh, I hate that motherfucker. And it's very rare. But that's my biggest thing, is to try to see it from someone else's perspective and try to like have empathy for them, because think about how much shit I've done to people that people forgave me for.
Yeah. The resentment thing is hard. Like I was just yesterday when I was riding my bike, I was thinking of somebody that came in my house and pulled a gun on me because I found out he was snitching, and I told somebody else, and he was mad or whatever, so he came and pulled a gun on me. That was like over 20 years ago, bro. And I'm riding my bike yesterday, picturing his face to push harder on the pedal. So that resentment is
It's like motivating you.
it's sitting right there. Yeah, it's for a good thing, but it's still not good to be thinking like that. I appreciate you having me come do this.
Of course, bro. I love you, bro.
Anybody that got to hear this podcast, words are powerful, and for some reason this podcast found you. Even if you're not an addict, I hope it does something for you and you have a better day.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I love you, bro.
Love you too, dog.
Thank you. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. This show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com.